I want to start by saying I hate those automatic lights that are based on movement. You know when you walk into a room and the lights are off until you take a couple of steps in? Yeah, those. They're the worst. I think it could have something to do with the crippling fear of the dark, but who knows for sure. Unfortunately, my work is filled with them. Usually it's not a big problem. Throughout the day, people are constantly walking around, so the lights tend to stay on. Ever since the pandemic hit, though, most of the staff has been working from home, except for a few lucky individuals who are still required to work in the building. I am one of those lucky individuals. So, towards the end of the day, there are only a handful of us here, and most of the lights are shut off. There's still a decent amount of light in the main work area. The only real problem is the bathrooms. Before the lockdown, there were enough people going in and out of the bathrooms to keep the lights on. Now, though, the lights are off more than on. Now, when I say I'm afraid of the dark, I mean it. I need to have my TV on in my room for me to sleep. So when I head to the bathroom at work and the lights are off, it usually takes me a second before I can work up the courage to actually step inside. In fact, I end up having to hold the door open to let some of the external light spill in until the lights turn on. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the saying, the boss makes $1 while I make a dime. That's why I use the restroom on company time. Well, I'm a firm believer in that. I usually take multiple bathroom breaks throughout the day, but not so much anymore. Because there's people coming in and out, I am deathly horrified that I'll be sitting there, sending the Browns to the Super Bowl, and the lights will shut off. This day, though, I couldn't help it. I must have eaten something bad on my lunch break because, believe me when I tell you, it felt like a nuke was going off in my stomach. I ran to the bathroom, rushed in but immediately froze. I was halfway in but the lights hadn't come on. I realized this just as the door started to close and sprinted for it. As soon as my hand grabbed the handle, the lights popped on. I thought it was strange, but I was in a rush and didn't really have time to contemplate the electrical problems of the building. Thinking back now, I had the sensation something wasn't right. I wish I had just left. I managed to make it to the toilet and conduct my business. What I failed to do in my rush to drop the kids off at the pool is grab my phone. Well, this wasn't the end of the world. You know how awful that is. So all I could do was sit in silence and wait. I would have preferred silence to what happened next. I heard the door open. Now there's only one stall in the bathroom I went to. That's why I chose it. I like my privacy. But whoever entered the room came directly to the stall. I couldn't see through the crack who it was, but I heard them reach for the handle. If you've ever been in this situation, you know how awkward it is. I froze for a second but managed to spit out, "I'm in here." So they would know. I was, in fact, in there. But they kept pulling on the door. Thought it was weird, but maybe they hadn't heard me. "I'll be out in a second," I said, making sure they would be able to hear me this time. Still, they pulled on the door. I could hear the lock banging against the latch. I was worried it would slip off and I'd be stuck facing my coworker in the eye, literally caught with my pants around my ankles. "Hey, I'm using this, man. Give me a sec." I was basically yelling at this point, but they kept pulling harder and harder. Something was wrong. Even if somehow they couldn't hear me, why would someone try so hard to force their way in a stall? The door was banging louder and louder. I was getting ready to just pull up my pants and face them. Then the banging stopped. I stood there, well, crouched, really, waiting to see what they were going to do. Whoever it was, I heard them take a couple steps back. "Dude, you scared the shit out of me," I yelled. Pun fully intended. But they didn't respond. It was silent for a minute, but then I heard them walk towards the door, open it, and leave. The door closed and I was alone in the stall again. I sat back down. I could feel the adrenaline start to subside and I started to calm down. But as soon as my breathing returned to normal, the lights went off. Damn it. I silently screamed. This was literally a nightmare. I was even angrier with myself for forgetting my phone. At least I would have some light. I started quickly finishing up my business. By the way, if you've never had to wipe in pitch black, I wouldn't recommend it. I pulled my pants back up, unlocked the door, and stepped out of the stall. As soon as I did, I froze. The lights were still off. The sensors should have detected me and turned the lights on. I waved my arm above my head, trying to activate the sensors. Nothing. I raised both my hands around. I started jumping. Still nothing. I thought, maybe this really is a nightmare. I shut my eyes, then opened them again. The fact that my vision didn't change at all was unsettling. Okay, I thought to myself. I just have to walk forward and open the door. The bathroom isn't huge by any means, but it was a decent size. I just had to take a couple steps forward and I'd be through the door. After 2 steps, I stopped in my tracks. I couldn't see my own nose in front of my face, but I could feel something in the room with me. You know that feeling you get when someone is staring at you from across the room? That's what I felt, except somehow it was more intense. Whoever it was felt close. The logical part of my brain told me whoever was trying to open the door must have stayed in the bathroom, waiting for me to finish. But I was sure I heard them leave. It was possible they had come back in and I didn't hear the door, but it didn't seem likely. Hello? I said, barely louder than a whisper. No response. I cleared my throat. Someone else in here? I said, louder this time. Still no response. It had to be my mind playing tricks on me. Because I was in pitch black, my senses were just going crazy. But just in case, I decided I was going to sprint for the door. But I couldn't move. For anyone that's ever had sleep paralysis, you'll be familiar with the feeling. I tried to make my legs move, but they didn't budge. In fact, I couldn't move any part of my body. That just made the panic worse. I was internally screaming at my own body, desperately trying to get something to move. But the only part of my body I could control were my eyes. All I could do was look into the darkness, not that I could actually see anything. Then suddenly, the feeling of someone nearby vanished. I felt my body relax and I managed to turn my head. The darkness mixed with the silence of the bathroom was still so creepy, but at least I could move. I started walking to the door. I decided against sprinting because I didn't want to accidentally slam into the door. But that's when I started to panic again. The door wasn't there. I took a few steps, but there was nothing there. No door, no wall, nothing. I thought maybe I had misjudged how far I had been from the door, but after taking a few more steps, I knew that the door should have been there. At the very least, I should have felt a wall or something. I reached out to my right. The sinks should have been there. I stepped in the same direction. Still, nothing. I took a few more steps forward, then a few more, my pace quickening. None of this made sense. There was no possible way I hadn't run into something yet. Before I knew it, I was running. Even as I was running, I thought, how? How am I running in a bathroom? Any logic or sense I had left was currently gone. I was in a full panic, sprinting, bracing myself to run into a wall or the door, but there was nothing. After a minute of running, I stopped. I tried to catch my breath. Between the fear and the running, I was having trouble breathing. That's when I felt it again. The feeling that someone or something was nearby, but it felt closer this time. Again, I was unable to move. I wanted to swing out. I wanted to run away, but I couldn't get my body to move. Whatever was nearby felt like it was only inches from me. After what felt like forever, it suddenly vanished, just like before. I'll admit, I wanted to cry. None of this made any sense. I couldn't be dreaming. I was moving too quickly. I could feel the pain in my lungs from the heavy breathing. I was definitely awake. So what the hell was going on? Tried to calm myself down. Tried to tell myself there was a logical explanation. But it was no use. Of course, there was no logical explanation. There was absolutely no way any of this could be explained. As I thought about this, the feeling came back. But it wasn't as strong this time. It was faint, almost as if the presence was farther away. And I could still move. I stood still, trying to sense whatever was around me. The feeling got stronger, or the presence got closer. I looked around out of habit. I was still blind, but I could tell something was coming closer. I didn't wait to see if I'd be paralyzed again and sprint in. I didn't know where to. Part of me still braced to run into something. Maybe I was just holding on to hope. This went on for days. At least, it felt like days. Honestly, I didn't know how long I'd been here. I know it was a long time. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I ate, but I wasn't hungry. After all the running around, I wasn't thirsty, but I was tired. Beyond tired. I was more exhausted than I'd ever been in my entire life. There were times I tried to rest, but as soon as I lay down, I could feel that presence again in the distance, so I'd hop up and quickly run away. I also had to keep changing direction. At least I think I was. If I walked in one direction for too long, I'd suddenly be paralyzed and I could feel it right in front of me. At some point, the idea of sight didn't even make sense to me. It was like the darkness was all I ever knew, or ever would know. I wondered if this was what it was like to be blind, always seeing darkness. I wasn't even aware of my other senses at times. I could hear my footsteps when I moved, but nothing else. Now that I think about it, I wasn't even sure I could feel. I knew there was some surface beneath me. I wasn't falling. When I sat down, it wasn't hard or soft. I can't think of a word to describe it, but it reminded me of how it felt when a dentist numbs your mouth. You can feel the tools grinding and scraping away, but you can't actually feel it. The only thing I could feel for certain was whenever that thing was close. Eventually, I came to a conclusion. I was going to die in the darkness. At first, it was just a thought, but as time went on, I knew it. Deep down, I was never getting out. Eventually, whatever was chasing me was actually going to catch up. That or I was finally going to crack and lose my mind, if I hadn't already. Either way, I knew I wasn't getting out. I stopped. Not to rest, not to think. I just stopped. I didn't want to do it anymore. If everything was going to end here, I wanted it to be my choice. The feeling was somehow therapeutic. I was still scared, but something about giving in, accepting my fate, it was a sobering thought. I had never been so tired, so desperate for a chance to rest. For a second, I almost felt at peace. Then I felt the presence again. It was close. Not directly in front of me, but close enough that I could tell which direction it was in. I turned to face it. I stared straight ahead. I saw nothing, but I knew it was in front of me. "You win," I yelled. The sound of my voice startled me. I hadn't opened my mouth in so long. It was strange hearing my own voice. I could feel tears start to fill my eyes as it got closer. I considered just sitting down, letting whatever happens, happen. But at the last second, I decided against it. I looked straight ahead. Somehow, I knew exactly where it was. It was still coming towards me, but I could feel that it had slowed down. Like it wanted me to wait, like it wanted to savor the moment. Looking back now, I couldn't tell you why I did what I did. Maybe it was feeling like I was being mocked. Maybe it's because I had already accepted my fate. But at the last moment, I sprinted forward. Not to run away, but to run towards it. Whatever was about to happen, I wasn't going to go down without a fight. I've never been a violent person, but I'll never forget that feeling. The feeling of wanting to absolutely eviscerate this thing, that had taunted me for so long. I wanted to tear it apart. I wanted it to feel the same fear I felt, even if only for a second. I was headed right for it. I screamed at the top of my lungs. My chest was on fire. I could feel tears running down my face. I could feel it, closer than ever. Just as I felt myself about to run into it, I was knocked to the ground. I was stunned for a second, but quickly got up. Did it just hit me? Were we really about to have a boxing match after all this? But nothing happened. I stood still for a minute, waiting to feel another strike. That's when I noticed I couldn't feel the presence anymore. I spun around. I tried to control my breathing. Had I scared it away? A thought occurred to me. I was in pain. Not emotionally. Well, definitely emotionally. But it hurt when I hit the ground. It was hard. After a few moments, I bent over to catch my breath. But as I did, I banged my head on something. Fuck, I said, grabbing my head. That's when I realized my voice had echoed. It hadn't done that earlier when I was yelling. I stood straight up, pausing. I didn't want to get my hopes up. I didn't want to feel disappointed again. But I reached forward, slowly. I knew there would be nothing there. I knew I was still trapped in this hell. I lifted my arm just a little higher, and it hit something solid. I pressed my palm against the surface in front of me. It felt smooth. I moved my hand around before finally feeling a handle. I let out a weird shout. I have to assume it was excitement. I didn't pull the handle, though. What if this was a trick? What if whatever had been following me put this here to mess with me? I quickly realized I didn't care. If I was right, I'd be in the same place I had been. But if I was wrong? I yanked the door open and was quickly met with a blinding light. After a few moments, my eyes adjusted and I realized it wasn't a blinding light. It was the regular LED lights. Like the ones that are used all around my work. No, these were the lights of my work. I stepped down. I was back in the hallway that led to the bathroom. I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I stood in the hallway for a few minutes. I wasn't sure what to do. I decided to walk towards my desk. When I got there, one of my coworkers made a comment about me being gone for a while and asked if I was okay. I stared at him blankly for a moment before nodding and simply replying, "Yeah, stomach bug." He asked me if I needed to go home. He barely finished the question before I grabbed my things and headed to my car. I don't remember leaving the building. I don't remember the drive home. I don't even remember calling out sick for the rest of the week. I wish I didn't remember any of it. But I'll never forget that place, that feeling of being constantly watched. That feeling has haunted me ever since. I've had every light on in my apartment since I got home, even during the day. My electric bill is gonna be insane this month. Someone must be looking out for me, because 3 days after, I got an email saying I would be able to work from home. I don't think I've ever replied to a work email so fast in my life. So that's where I've been for the last few weeks. If I'm being honest, I haven't left my house much. I refuse to go out at night. I haven't seen anyone since that day. Whatever happened that day did more than scare me. I notice I've had a problem with my anger. Like I said before, I've never been a violent person, but lately I've had a short fuse. A close friend came by to check on me the other night. He accidentally turned off one of my lights and I lost it. And I mean completely lost it. I was screaming at him. I pictured myself attacking him. I hate to admit it, but for a brief moment, I thought I might kill him. He left before I got to that. I haven't seen anyone since. As horrible as it might sound, I hope this pandemic goes on forever. I'm dreading going back to that place. There's no way I'll ever be able to use the bathroom again. I've been looking around for other jobs. I want to get far away and hopefully eventually forget everything. I didn't even want to write all this. I've been trying not to think about it. But a couple of bulbs went out around my place and it's the middle of the night, so everything is closed. Every time one went out, I would have sworn I could sense something nearby. But I'm sure I'm being paranoid. To top things off, I think I caught another stomach bug. I'd been stuck in my bathroom, and with all the light problems, I couldn't help but think of what happened. So I decided to just write it all out. I'm not sure, but I think the hallway light just went out. I'm starting to regret taking the time to write all this. Damn, why didn't I charge my phone? It's almost dead, and one of the bathroom lights just went out.